All right, welcome to Doozer Shop. More work on the forklift, the Clark GPS15. Let me show you. I've got the wheels off, or a wheel off right now. And what you do, I wanted to show you guys. The forklifts, most forklifts can jack themselves up on their own. And you can see the tilt cylinders that control the front to back tilt of the mast. What you do is you block up the mast with cribbing, with wood, and you just tilt the mast forward and it lifts it off the ground. So that's kind of handy. I got an extra block of wood just to make sure that everything stays where it's supposed to stay. Let me begin at the beginning. Master cylinders for the brakes on this side are in, and the inching valve on the other side is in. Put everything back together. Some people have mentioned dropping the steering column down for more access. There's two bolts, and I unbolted the emergency brake lever, and that gave me pretty good access to what I needed. I'm not going to film in close because it's kind of hard, but I want to go around the front and I want to show you. I changed the routing of the brakes. I got new brake lines that I made up, and I bent them all. Just the other ones were just tacoed. They're just past their prime. For whatever reason, that hole was there, and nothing was coming out. No hoses or anything. Don't know what that was for, but I ran the distribution block, the T block. I put it right there. I drilled and tapped and put a hole for a bolt to secure it. And then, see this block, it was underneath, and you know, it was so hard to get at. It was behind, not this hose, but that hose. It was like down in there. And I said, what a pain in the butt. So instead, I ran new lines, and this line is only about 12 inches long, and it just goes zigzag, zig up to the master cylinder. So that's easy. And I got the one going off to this side removed, and this one, you can see, just goes down to the wheel cylinder. So I got a bend there. Use my handy dandy little bendy tool, and got a bend there. And the lines are pretty much mirror images of each other. And I took the one off of this side because I'm working on the brakes. Da-dee-da-da. And working on the brakes. And this wasn't as terrible as most forklifts typically are to get the brake drums off and the wheel hubs off. First thing you do is you pull the axle, and the axle is right there. Okay, it's a little stubby. I believe it's called a semi-floating axle. It had 18 bolts, 18 3/8 American thread bolts holding this on. Now, some people, the term has gotten perverted over the years. This is a semi-floating axle, where it's got a flange and a spline. A full floating axle has a spline and a spline. That's what a full floating axle is. This is a semi-floating axle. People call this a full floater, and it's not. The reason is, you know, it has if you want float on both sides, you get a little bit of flex, and it's easier to store an axle with two splines and not a hat, not an upset hat. Truckers back in the day, in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, they used to store these behind the seat. If they broke an axle from letting the clutch out too hard or getting wheel hop on a dirt road, they had a spare axle, and they're easy to store. And like I said, it's got 18 bolts that hold it in. That's quite a bit. I took this apart because the wheel cylinder So as hard as I tried, I snapped a bleeder off. Right? Dang, blangity dang. Snapped a bleeder off. And I heated this thing, the bleeder, I had it red with the torch, maybe 4 times, 5 times. And I think it had a crack in it, because it felt spongy with the wrench. No matter. These were disgusting. They were just, brake fluid had leaked. I don't know if oil had leaked out the seal. The axle seal rides there. And it's a rotating seal, which I don't like, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. So these are kind of like car brakes, but not really. I talked to a friend of mine the other day, and he was talking about doing the brakes on his forklift. He's like, oh, they're just like car brakes. No, they are just a bit different, where it's a pain in the butt. They're not quite the same. But anyhow, this was a hot, nasty mess. I used the shop vac in conjunction with the air hose to blow the stuff loose and suck it up. These are not riveted or bonded. This came off. It was off. It's a good thing I pulled it. It's a good thing the bleeder broke and I had to pull this. I thought I was done with the brake situation. I thought I got the lines on, got the master cylinders put in, thought I was done, but no. And a good thing, because this thing was just crud city. I thought I could. I'm going to check on the price of brake shoes from my Clark guy. I could rivet this back on. I could drill the holes and put rivets in it. I'd bond it and rivet it. If I were to bond this, I'd clean it super well and bake out the oil in the shoe, bake it out with heat, and I'd probably use contact cement like you would for countertops. I don't think that's quite the right stuff, but if you guys know what glue they use to bond brake shoes, leave a comment, because I've searched the internet. It's not readily available information. It's not out there that I can find. Probably unique to Clark. You know, these are cast shoes as opposed to stamped steel and da-di-da-da, whatever. The wheel cylinder, the slave cylinder, goes in here, and it's capped up. This is kind of a neat design because it's got a shield, which is cool. Some of the international trucks had that, and it has it can't let the cups blow out because it's kind of guided on the side here, guided, whatever. Not as bad as I thought. My emergency brake cable is right here, and it's seized up, and it didn't used to be seized up, but you know, time everything gets entropy and returns to rust. The axle bearings come off with a flange and 4 bolts, and it had lock tabs, lock plate, I guess you'd call it. But this is really good. I wish big trucks would use this, but I know they don't because the axles are never as thick. This is a 3,000 pound lift truck. It probably weighs closer to 6. But man, like a Dana 60 axle is 6,000 pounds. This is half that rating. But let's say it was a 6,000 pound. I mean, this is a 3,000 pound axle, or maybe 4 by the time you get. But that's so thick. Look at the tube. How thick that is. I mean, that's a 1/2 inch thick wall tube. Kind of neat. I might replace. I'm going to see my forklift guy. Going to get me a quote on shoes. I've looked at lines. I can't find the part numbers online. That's why I got to go through this Clark guy. Because the Clark, I got the manual, but it gives you a specification number, not a part number, and you got to cross it with your serial number, right? Or it gives you it gives you numbers, but they're not part numbers. They're just like spec numbers, or I forget what they call them. But anyways, so he already said 30 bucks, 32 bucks for slave cylinders, wheel cylinders, and he's going to get me a price on shoes, and I got to ask him about emergency brake cables. I could maybe free these cables up. Now that I got everything apart, they're not too hard to fish out. They just go in there, and there's the handle. Figure if I go take them out, maybe I can free them up. But that's my task today. Oops, is to get the other side off. The other side. Oh, I was able to use my gear puller. I backed off the brake shoes as much as I could. Turns out there's 2-star wheels, and I got this great puller, and I was able to grab on 2 of the 18 bolts that hold the axle flange in. So that was a kick butt, really awesome solution. It just really just awesome. So anyways, let me take you in the shop real quick. I've been cleaning this stuff up slowly. Here's the axle seal. Now this is a rotating seal. I don't like these. They have their uses. The seal is 4 1/8 outside, and it rides on a 3 1/8 axle stub. That's what I showed you at the forklift. The thing is, this seal actually rotates. This member is stationary with the housing, and the steel part rotates, but the sealing surface is not the axle housing. The sealing surface is in the metal seal. So press fits on and doesn't rotate. There's like a really tight lip. You can get these, and they're good as a secondary repair replacement if you have a groove worn in your axle housing where the seal rides, because if you put this type on, it no longer rotates on the groove that's worn. It's just a stationary seal, and that helps. But I don't like these because it pulled apart when I pulled the drum off. It's just so I found a seal at the auto parts, just a National Oil lip seal. And I crossed the number by the sizes. So that works. And then, you know, new brake lines. I didn't use these. I'm going to take them back. These are like $14 a piece, you know, for just these 20-inch, or no, these are 30-inch lines at that store. This is the star wheel adjuster. I wanted to show you guys. I unbolted it from the backing plate. And it's got 1 star wheel for each shoe. So I was backing this one off, and I still couldn't get the drum off, so I pulled it with the gear puller, not knowing that there was another on this side, you know. And it's always a crapshoot whether you are moving it and it's tightening it or loosening it, and you just don't know. And this is actually, I took it apart and cleaned it and re-oiled it and wire brushed all the rust off. And it's got this plate that kind of floats on 2 pins, and the springs add tension. So it's easy to go clockwise, but it's hard to go counterclockwise. So if you're clicking it and it's easy, it's tightening the brakes up, and it's expanding this out because this is threaded, you know. If you're using the brake adjuster tool and it's hard, you're trying to go counterclockwise, and you're lifting that dog up, that pawl, And the same, it's mirror image. So to tighten this one, you go up. Is that right? To tighten the brakes, you go up on this one, and to tighten the brakes, you go down. I was trying to loosen the brakes, so I was... Let's see, this is that way. This is the nut. Well, I forget, and I was going to really think about it and write it down. But basically, just the key takeaway is, if it's easy to click, you're tightening the brakes. If it's hard to click, you're loosening the brakes, as in you're trying to get the drum off. So that's that. I spent a good amount of time taking all this apart, cleaning it, and this whole center I packed with red grease. So that's good to bolt on. Good to go. I got the receipt there. I'm going to take those back to the auto parts and get $26 back, because Jesus, it's just crazy. Just everything's expensive nowadays. The brake drum hub has Timken bearings in it, and this does not come out the front. Both bearings come out the back. Usually the front bearing comes out the front and the rear bearing comes out the back. Well, this bearing comes in from the back, there's a spacer put in, and there's a big snap ring that you got to remove with snap ring pliers. It's just how they made it. I don't know. The problem with this is, you need a gasket on here for the axle. Like I said, these are 18 bolts. They're 3/8 coarse thread. So they didn't use a gasket. They used silicone sealant, RTV, room temperature vulcanizing RTV sealant. Not the greatest, but not the worst. But the problem is, if you look in these holes, you can see the bearing rollers. And what they did is the bolts run in the transmission, the axle oil, and they put silicone on the bolt threads as not to have them seep oil. Well, because they're right through to the bearing race, they pushed silicone sealant into the bearing. When I took this apart, I found globs of, rubbery silicone in between the two bearings in the drum here. It's just mechanics, stop using silicone for everything. It's just you think about what you're doing. I might put a little Permatex #2, which is non-hardening, or even gasket shellac on the bolt threads, or even a little bit of pipe dope. I don't know if I can lift this one-handed, maybe. You can kind of see, so there's, in the foreground, that's the race for the inside bearing. And you can see, it's hard to see, there's a snap ring and a spacer that holds the race in for the outboard bearing. So I don't know, I should knock these out and clean the silicone out. But anyways, I know when these brakes worked like 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, I had a hell of a time adjusting the brakes. Number one, because I was using 1-star wheel adjuster. I didn't know there was 2, but that really wasn't. The problem is they'd get tight, loose, because this drum is not machined concentric to the axle bearings. This thing would get tight, loose, tight, loose, tight, loose. So the drum is, and I don't think it's warped. I've talked to some forklift people, and they said, oh yeah, those things were manufactured terrible, just terrible. So now that I got this one off, and I'm probably going to take the other side off today, should I turn the drum? Well, where are you going to grab it? The studs in the flange are an okay place to grab it, but the best is to use a mandrel between centers or something and pilot on, take the bearing out, just pilot on the races or pilot in the bore. That's a huge pain, like a cone on each side to mate the cone, and then you use the tailstock to support it, and then just like you would on a brake lathe at the machine shop or the auto parts. Basically what I would have to do is, I know this is a different setup that I just had, you'd have to have a mandrel like this with a cone on this side and then something in the tailstock, or it's hard to grab a drum without between centers, cones. It's just hard. But something like that, and I don't even know if I want to spend the time to do it. It stops and you don't notice it. It doesn't pulsate because it does 2 miles an hour. I might say the heck with it, but it sure would be nice to turn the drums. I got all this fancy schmancy equipment. I don't know. Well, I got to get rolling with this video, and I'm going to, do the other side, and and just get rolling with it. But what a lot of work. I thought I was done. I was going to fill it with brake fluid and bleed it, but oh no. Oh no. All right, thanks for watching the forklift update video. Appreciate you watching. Hope, maybe I taught you something, or at least what to look out for. But overall, these Clarks are not as bad as like some of the Bakers or the Yales that I've had apart. Not too terrible as far as that goes. Some are, you can't even get the drums off. It's like a fight to the death to get the drum off. But I think I did reasonably okay with this one. I don't mind putting money into it, and I really want the parking brake to work and the regular brakes to work. I've used it for about 5 years without brakes, and it's been not a problem, but it's a safety issue. I don't want to crash in the back of someone's pickup truck tailgate. Whatever, doesn't matter. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Doozer's Shop.